Going to be benchmarking Far Cry 6 on the Asus ROG X13 laptop. Today's the first day the game is out. It is using the newest GeForce driver, which came out on September 20th, but it is specifically optimized for this game. I just did a run with it plugged in, using the settings I'll show you shortly. Plugged in on the turbo mode. Don't worry about this minimum FPS where it dipped to 40. That happens at the very end of the benchmark. Something weird happens there. It just drops the frame rate at the end when nothing's happening. We can see, got an average FPS of 74, maximum hits at 93 with the settings. I'll show you in just a sec. We're going to be running it at 1080p because it does support normal 16:9 widescreen, just like Far Cry 5 did. Now we're going to be rerunning it unplugged on battery power, and I've been doing some experimenting with it. Here's the settings, like I said, 16:9. It will be the 3050 Ti. It's a 30 watt variant, well, I should say 35 watt variant if you have it plugged in on turbo mode, but unplugged it won't go above 30, 31 in most games. Now, I tried changing settings in here to try to maximize the VRAM usage, but unfortunately in this game, every setting is super expensive, unlike on Far Cry 5. So the only thing I've changed is basically going to be the low preset, but the only thing I changed is the environment. I switch it to medium, and if you pay attention to the puddle on the ground, it's because there's a huge difference between screen space reflections on puddles between medium and low. So I'll toggle this to low. You'll see that the puddles no longer reflect anything, so it's basically pointless to even have the puddles there on low, so it doesn't look good. But this does have a huge performance hit on here, and I tried running benchmarks, just toggling these one at a time. They all have huge performance hits individually, even the texture filtering. Look at how much VRAM it takes up, just toggling that to medium. And it has a huge performance hit. It'll like tank the frame rate. So pretty much every one of these settings tanks the frame rate. I tried running the DirectX reflections on here. It does hurt the frame rate significantly, although it does look a lot better than the screen space reflections, but I couldn't claw the performance back to keep the minimum FPS close to 60 on battery power. So VSync turned off, frame rate lock turned off. When you turn on environment to medium to claw back that performance, you need to enable the Fidelity FX Super Resolution, and quality mode seems to be the best compromise to keep it close to 60 FPS for the minimum FPS on battery power. So we'll run the benchmark, and at the end I'll have a supplemental section talking about the settings you need to change on this laptop to get the most of this out of just running it off battery power for maximum portability for gaming. So if you have the environment at low, you won't, on these wet roads, you won't see the reflections of the buildings or the car. So that's why I had to switch it to medium as a minimum.
This is a reminder that curfew will be in effect tonight. It is strongly urged that you respect this safety measure established by your government.
And as you can see, don't worry about like that minimum FPS. For some reason, at the end of the benchmark, it just tanks the frame rate when it's not even doing anything. So we've got an average of 59 with these settings, pretty good compromise, and it's pretty stable as far as that. So we could turn on VSync and probably get almost a lock 60 FPS with those settings. Low looks pretty good actually, but it's this game's way more stressful than Far Cry 5, where Far Cry 5, there's basically no difference if you toggled it between normal and high on this laptop because it's CPU limited, but this one, any setting you change, like tanks a frame rate, and there'll be certain sections of the benchmark it's running fine, and then bam, you get like this huge spike down to like the 20s for a couple seconds. It'll go fine again, then a huge spike down to the 20s for a couple seconds, toggling some of those graphics settings just even up one notch to medium. But stay tuned for the supplemental segment, and I'll talk about the other settings you need to adjust on this laptop to get the most power out of it on portable battery power. This will be a supplementary segment I'll probably paste in the end of my video edits for this laptop for the ROG Flow X13 with the Ryzen 9 5900HX with the low wattage, basically max Q version of the RTX 3050 Ti. The reason I got this laptop is so I can game on battery power. When you do it on battery power, as you can see, there's no plug jack on here. You only get performance mode is the highest setting you can get. But the most important setting you need to disable in order to get fast battery performance is go into your GeForce experience, turn this off, battery boost, or limit it to something more reasonable. So if you enable it, by default it's going to be 30 FPS, although you can crank it up to 60. So I just turn it off, just for the testing. That'll be the biggest performance enhancer for it. On CPU-Z, it does have dual channel RAM. It is the very fast LPDDR-X RAM, 4266 megahertz. And the reason I'm filming this extra segment with a AverMedia capture box, which will film it in widescreen, is for some reason on the GeForce software, I don't have the privacy option down here, so I can capture the desktop at the native resolution. So I'm not sure why that is. I can't figure out how to enable it. But yeah, so the purpose of my uploads will be to show the performance that I can get on battery power, because that's the reason I bought this laptop, is to do some fast gaming just on battery power unplugged, because for plugged in, I've got other laptops that can do it much better.